for the NFC
Oh, let's go.
champion, Detroit Lions.
I'm so ready for football. You guys got to be ready. Come on. As of this recording, we're about a week away.
Led by their quarterback, Jared Goff, who tonight faces
go.
who else but the man he replaced and the one who replaced him, Super Bowl champion Matthew Stafford.
Oh, it's going to be so
and
much
the Los
fun. Let's
Angeles
go.
Rams in this Sunday night NFC wild card game, and what a wild seat it is in downtown Detroit. Good evening, Mike Tirico, Chris Collins.
My fellow Lions fans, the 53-man roster is set and the 2024-25 NFL season is now upon us. Let's revisit the state of the Lions and look ahead at what could be the most magical season in Detroit Lions history. Welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, Johnny Gaz. Thank you for coming back for another video. In this State of the Lions, we'll take a look at that initial 53-man roster for the Detroit Lions, as well as see how their practice squad is building so far. And we'll look ahead to the regular season and that first matchup with the LA Rams. Let's go. Before we dive into one of the best rosters in the NFL, make sure to hit that like button if you dig the vibe here at Johnny Gaz Sports. Hitting that subscription button and the notify bell is the best way to make sure you don't miss any future videos. Thank you guys so much for sharing Lions football with me. Discussing it with you is a true passion of mine, and getting close to the regular season has built so much excitement. Make sure to comment down below on all the topics we talk about here today. What did you think of the initial 53-man roster? Thank you guys so much for the support. Let's get into today's topics. So let's dive right into it. Let's look at the updated 53-man roster for the Detroit Lions, courtesy of our friends at Pride of Detroit. Lions only keeping 2 quarterbacks on the active roster. Of course, Jared Goff, and now your backup quarterback officially, Hendon Hooker. The Lions released Nate Sudfeld, and he did not end up back on the practice squad. We'll talk about the practice squad in just a moment. Of course, at running back, what I think is now the best room in all of the NFL, starting with the best duo in all of football, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Craig Reynolds as that third running back expected, and then Sione Vaki, the very impressive rookie there. And I'm excited to see what that room brings the Lions in 2024. Again, what I'm thinking is that best running back room in all of the NFL. At wide receiver, the Lions only keeping 4 guys on the active roster currently. That does change a little bit as we talk about the practice squad here in a moment. Amon-Ra St. Brown at the top, followed by Jamison Williams, Khalif Raymond as your number 3, and not a surprise making the roster, undrafted free agent Isaiah Williams. At tight end, Sam Laporta, Brock Wright, and Parker Hesse, the only 3 tight ends kept on the roster. I sort of expected a 4th. James Mitchell, Shane Zylstra, unfortunately, did not make the active roster, and I think it's just, again, because of the versatility that Hesse provides. We know what Sam Laporta gives you, and the faith that the Lions have in Brock Wright. At offensive tackle, Taylor Decker, Penei Sewell, Dan Skipper making the initial roster, I think, for the first time in his career with the Lions, so shout out to him. But he's been that 6th offensive lineman for the Lions for several seasons, followed up by Colby Solsdahl and, of course, the rookie Giovanni Manu. In the interior, Frank Ragnow, Graham Glasgow, Kevin Zietler, Coyote Awasika, and Michael Neese. A little bit of a surprise there, but the reserve Christian Mahogany worked himself back into football shape. And we'll talk about, how the other practice squad members factor into this. At defensive tackle on the other side of the football, Aleem McNeil, DJ Reader, Levi Onwuzurike, and Mekhi Wingo. On injured reserve following his injury coming off the Steelers preseason game is Broderick Martin. At defensive end, big man Aiden Hutchinson, Marcus Davenport, followed up by Josh Paschal, James Houston. Somewhat of a surprise, but I think, again, turning him into a pure pass rusher, putting him strictly on the edge position, hoping to get the most out of him there. Hopefully will give the Lions what they're looking for. And then surprisingly, I think John Kaminsky on the active roster, not on any sort of injured reserve role, so you wonder what his status is moving forward. I'll keep you posted on that one. At linebacker, Alex Anzalone, Jack Campbell, Derek Barnes, Malcolm Rodriguez, Jalen Reeves-Maybin. And then, again, a little bit of surprise. Lions hold on to Ben Neiman, and they have now claimed off of waivers Trevor Nowaski, which he had been on the roster previous, so just building on that linebacker depth. At cornerback, Carlton Davis, Terrion Arnold, Amik Robertson, Enos Rakestraw. No surprise there, followed up by Khalil Dorsey, Kindle Vildor, and of course on IR, Emmanuel Mosley. At safety, a little bit of a surprise here in this group. Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph, Ife Melifonwu, Brandon Joseph does make the active roster. Again, I think that's a well-earned spot. And then Lauren Strickland. So they're going to keep a 5th safety on the roster. I'm not saying Lauren Strickland didn't earn a spot on the team, but I think in looking at other guys like Isaac Ukwu, who you didn't see listed in that edge position group, over a guy like Strickland is a little bit questionable to me, but Lions decide they're going to keep a fifth safety. Of course, Jack Fox, the punter. Jake Bates is your sole kicker at this point. And Hogan Hatton wins the long snapper job over Scott Daly, who has since signed elsewhere. You also notice that Ty Summers was not included on that list. He also has been signed by another organization. So switching over to the practice squad, and again, the Lions can sign 16 players to their practice squad. Let's just start from the top. They did bring back quarterback Jake Fromm. Jermar Jefferson, surprise, he cleared waivers. And I guess I should mention that all the players that the Lions did cut from their roster did end up clearing waivers, except for the two that I had mentioned who have since been signed. That's Ty Summers and Scott Daly. So running back Jermar Jefferson back on the practice squad. Interesting signing by the Lions. We know that initially they cut Donovan Peoples-Jones. Well, they started to kind of revamp the ex-wide receiver search by bringing in former Denver Bronco Tim Patrick. He spent 7 seasons with Denver. The past 2 seasons, unfortunately, was on injured reserve. One was for an ACL, the other for a torn Achilles. But he had a productive 2021, the season prior, with 53 receptions, 734 yards, and 5 scores. And he is between 6'4" and 6'5", so he really fits that bill for the ex-wide receiver role, and he will have to earn his spot onto the active roster. So a very interesting move made by the Lions there. Also listed, as you see here, wide receiver Donovan Peoples-Jones, which is only now based on rumor. I have not seen the Lions confirm this yet, and I think this would be very interesting. I mean, I didn't think he earned a roster spot, but I thought the Lions would at least keep him on the active roster because they just didn't have the ex-wide receiver. Well, clearly there's some other sort of big plan going on, so we'll still wait and keep our ears to the ground and see if this holds true. Right now, Pride of Detroit has him listed on their 16-piece active practice squad. Lions also went out and signed wide receiver Allen Robinson to their practice squad. Of course, is a former Giant as well as a former Steeler, and they had joint practices with both those teams in this offseason, so they did get a good look at Allen Robinson. He is a long-time veteran in the NFL, I think 10 years, and he's given productive seasons, but he's at the tail end. He's closer to 6'2", so he's not as big as Tim Patrick. But I think the Lions it's kind of a low-risk, high-reward situation. Bring him into the practice squad. He'll have to earn his way onto the active roster. And, of course, he'll now have to compete with, assuming Tim Patrick and now also assuming Donovan Peoples-Jones. So you're going to have guys competing for that ex-receiver role for the Lions, which is very, very interesting. I'm also glad to see they brought back Kingsley Egaquin. I think I've been butchering that name forever. I think it's pronounced Egaquin. Again, he had a fantastic preseason in training camp. A lot of word from Lions camp is they had a lot of faith in him. He saw some time with the ones as all the starters were getting time off and recovering from some injuries here in the offseason. They also brought back Jamarco Jones, the tackle, and we talked about Shane Zylstra, James Mitchell. Well, they brought both those guys back to the practice squad. Isaac Ukwu, who I thought potentially had earned a spot on the active roster, maybe over a guy like Lawrence Strickland. He's now on the practice squad along with Mitchell Agudi. Defensive tackles Chris Smith, Kyle Pecco, Pat O'Connor, as well as safety CJ Moore also returning to the practice squad. So I think a good mix and guys that obviously they're all familiar with, all guys the Lions have had on in training camp and will be able to move forward. And I think the most interesting thing coming out of this is we'll have to find out what the true status is on Donovan Peoples-Jones and then what they do as far as shifting pieces around. Do they add another wide receiver to that room who then gets moved back to the practice squad? Come back to the channel. I'll certainly keep you posted. But let me know what you think down below. What do you think of the active roster, the guys they put on the practice squad? Did they miss on anybody? Is there a name you wanted to see here that isn't? I definitely want to hear from you. Let me know. Let's go through some strengths and weaknesses now as the Lions roster, at least the initial roster, is set. And again, there's going to be a lot of moving pieces, and we'll confirm a few things. But as we get close to the regular season, we're now just over a week away as of this recording before that first week against the LA Rams coming into town for that Sunday night football game. I am so excited for that. I cannot tell you. But let's go through strengths and weaknesses of this roster, in my opinion, as we get closer to this game. I think the ultimate strength of this team is their offensive line. The starting five is the best in the NFL. We went through the active roster. We talked a lot about in previous videos the depth pieces and how important that could be, especially if there are injuries up front. Guys like Kevin Zeitler, Graham Glasgow, Frank Ragnow, all guys that have had injuries and time off in previous seasons. So, they'll have to ensure that these guys in the depth pieces can step in and fill in when necessary. But the truth is the whole offense is predicated from those front five. And if they remain relatively healthy, they really will dictate everything this Lions team will do on offense here in 2024. I'm very excited. Playing off of that, of course, I think another strength of this team is their running back room. And I think it's gotten even better from 2023 now into 2024. I think the depth behind the best running back duo in the NFL, Craig Reynolds, Sione Vaki, gives them so much more versatility than in years past. Craig Reynolds is such a hard-nosed runner. I think he's almost your backup to David Montgomery, and then Jahmyr Gibbs backed up by Sione Vaki. But there's so much versatility there, not only just pure running football, but also now working into the passing game and giving that versatility to the Lions, especially if they have to continue to search for this X receiver. And that brings me to one of what I think is the weaknesses of this team currently is in their wide receiver room. And it's amazing to say that, considering it's a room led by All-Pro Amon-Ra St. Brown, who I think looks even better in 2024. A lot of word from camp as he just continues this ascension, continues to make catches and yards and touchdowns. And, the problem will really be if there's an injury or if the offense dictates that they need a taller wide receiver. They did not keep Donovan Peoples-Jones, and they did not find that taller, big-bodied guy to fill out this room. So in turn, they only kept 4 wide receivers and decided to bring in guys off of waivers onto the practice squad. We talked about Tim Patrick, now Allen Robinson, and word is that Donovan Peoples-Jones will now be in that mix. So out of those 3 guys, does anybody come in, stand out enough to where they move him into the active roster, and then he becomes a part of the XYZ scheme that the Lions like to run? So again, I'm a little bit concerned in the wide receiver room. I think the other group that concerns me is what the Lions did at the edge position. I like Marcus Davenport. I think if he can remain healthy, he could be very productive. But is he the opposite end to Hutch that ultimately you're really looking for, that destroyer on the other side that could just wreck games for the Lions? I don't know that he's that guy, and I don't know that they did enough behind him to ensure that Hutch has the help that I would have liked them to get this offseason. That's still a concern for me. So we'll have to see if increased play at the defensive tackle position with DJ Reader. Hopefully he works his way back before week 1. Increased play from Levi Onwuzurike. Do those pieces, shifting around, does that add enough help for Hutch to where maybe it doesn't matter that they didn't add a more significant piece at defensive edge? So that also concerns me. I think, outside of that, they still have questions in the secondary. I mean, they're just so young there. There's a lot of different pieces. They revamped the entire room. I think the only consistent guy you can say is Carlton Davis, but he also has a small injury history. So again, if something goes down there, can the young guys step in, and can the depth be enough to where that's not a concern for the Lions? Again, we just talked about maybe the concern at edge. Well, if they don't get the production they need there, then they really need those guys in the secondary to step up to get them everything they're trying to get here in 2024 and 25. I think they also have a concern at the backup quarterback. I like what Hendon Hooker's given them, but I think there's some inconsistency there. There's some instability there. He needs more time. So we really got to hope that Jared Goff remains healthy and leads the charge through this entire season so that Hendon Hooker really can sit there and learn the offense, learn the intricacies of the Ben Johnson offense and the NFL in general, and then hopefully have another offseason to continue to cultivate him as a backup quarterback. That's why I think they brought in Jake Fromm, signed him to the practice squad just in case. I was very surprised that they didn't allow Nate Sudfeld to play. Maybe they knew they were going to release him, so it wasn't worth their time. But again, I question whether or not Hendon Hooker is the true long-term solution. I really hope he is, but I don't know that he's ready to just step in and play if Jared Goff was to go down or if the worst-case scenario happened. I also think the Lions have a concern at kicker. We talked a lot about the inconsistency of Jake Bates in this preseason. Well, that's going to have to be cleaned up as we get into this regular season. The Lions have a history of gambling, going for it on 4th down. We know what Dan Campbell's mentality is, and I don't think that's going to change. But having a more accurate, confident kicker will help in that decision making. And I don't know that they have that just yet. So to me, again, that's still a question mark as they head towards the regular season. Week 1 is fast approaching. Lions versus Rams rematch from the wild card last year. Matthew Stafford coming back in for the first time in the regular season. Should be a fantastic atmosphere. If the preseason game tells you anything, the Lions fans may blow their roof off of Ford Field for this first regular season game. Sunday, September 8th. Kickoff just after 8:15 p.m. Sunday Night Football. It should be fantastic. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. The Lions come in and just blow the roof off the place. Are they overwhelming the Rams there in week 1, or do we got a good matchup? I think it's going to be close. I really do. And I'm going to give this game a full preview, so come back and see me on the channel. I will give the game a top to bottom game preview. We'll go through it in detail as we get a little bit closer to this first week. I want to make sure we give the roster a little bit more time to take shape, make sure we get the injury designations, and then I will give you that full preview. Make sure to hit that like button too on the video. It's the best free way to help out the channel, only if you dig the vibe here at Johnny Gas Sports. That subscription button, notify bell, best way to make sure you don't miss any future videos. I'm revamping the membership levels just to make sure that you get the best of the best here at Johnny Gas Sports. I'm going to have so many video options available to you, all the fun free content you come to love. The Y Series, top 10s, winners and losers, previews, predictions, reactions, all that good stuff. Thank you guys for spending some time with me. More than anything, take care of yourself, your mental health. I want to make sure you guys come back and see me on future videos. Thank you so much for your time. Have a fantastic day.